I'm excited to be joined by Jake Tripp from Unqork.
Hello, how's it going? Happy to be here.
That's awesome. So we're here at ITC 2024, and the Rage is all about innovation and moving the ball forward for insurance. And we've been a little bit sleepy, right, just as an industry as it relates to innovation. But as I've covered in the past, the concept of no and low code, Unqork always comes up. Talk a little bit about your product and your value proposition from that perspective.
Absolutely, and I'll start this a little bit with sort of, I guess, my background, maybe describe why I think this is so important. So I began as an underwriter. I was in industry, I was at a top 5 carrier, and I eventually was the underwriting officer for all their commercial casualty business in the US. And our biggest struggle was large, complex systems, right? Big old homegrown policy admin mainstream systems, right, that were expensive to maintain and move around. And honestly, I got a little bit frustrated trying to fix these things constantly, right? So I went off and I went into consulting, spent some time at Accenture and BCG working on all these, how do we plan, ahead to do this fun stuff around no code, around AI. And eventually landed here and very excited to be here. Unqork, I believe, offers probably the best solution to open up your spend towards innovation rather than maintenance of apps. So Unqork at a very high level, if anyone's not familiar who's listening, allows you to build enterprise grade applications for things like your underwriting workbenches, your claim systems, your agent management, all of these items, and you can build them without any code at all. No code completely. That's one of our big differentiators in the market, is how we help carriers and all of their partners, everyone in this space. We do banking as well, but we'll focus on insurance for now. Create these full, systems that are critical, right, to their operation. And once they've built it in Unqork, and curious sort of some of your thoughts as you talk to those other folks here. Once they build an Unqork, they now have a system where they have the full infrastructure, easy management, it's agile, it's simple to adjust, it can do all your specialty lines and additions, it's scalable, and it really is an incredible way to start building this modern world that we give the vision of here at ITC.
That's awesome, Jake. One of the things that occurs to me is that leveraging no-code platforms requires, I guess, the concept of the citizen developer, if you will, having a kind of a cadre of people who are forward-thinking, who don't necessarily grow up in IT, and they're business users like yourself. What advice would you have for organizations that are considering going the no or low code route as far as how they should be thinking about human capital as they think about implementing solutions like yours?
That's a great question. So Unqork, and I'll speak for some of our other sort of friends here as well, we're talking about large, complex systems. These are important, and they have complex architectures, right? Like, we may be no code, but we're integrating with an enormous amount of systems that are not, right? So citizen developer, I think, is a good way to think about how you can start to build in these systems, but I wouldn't recommend really any of them to be citizen developer first.
Got it.
In fact, from an Unqork standpoint, I want someone who understands architecture, right? Because these are things that, hey, we're able to build it without any code, but it's got to be performant. We have to have the APIs in the right spot. We have to build this thing right. That said, getting an appropriate level expertise to build an Unqork has a much lower bar than a lot of these other traditional systems, and folks who have a technical background and are interested in this type of thing and think in the right way, they can become experts in Unqork in a very short time frame. So that's what we tend to promote. We have a number of ways for them to get trained, self-service, boot camps, things like that. And typically our clients will start with some measure of experienced Unqork configurators and delivery partners. Again, a few of them are around here, dedicated houses who deliver Unqork. But we work with them to own the app over the course of the next few months.
Got it.
So we'll help them build, we'll give them all the knowledge around how you structure an app and create these things, and then upskill their team in parallel to eventually hand it off to them. And a lot of our clients have their own Unqork COEs these days, smaller teams that are able to manage much larger applications.
I love that, Jake. One of the things that I'm hearing and what you're talking about, and by the way, you're speaking my language as a former CIO, I always think about, and I worry about the whole notion of shadow IT and not understanding the full complexity of the ecosystem. But what I hear you talking about is a new opportunity now for us to bring that technical expertise and bridge it with the business expertise and have a new level of partnership.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So Gary Hoberman, our founder and CEO, actually is the ex-CIO of MetLife.
Okay.
And he created Unqork to solve a lot of the things that I'm mentioning. And his big presentation, sort of the last year or two, has always focused on You've got business groups and you've got IT groups, and they're often in like different planets, right?
Yeah.
And as a previous sort of business guy, and someone who was giving requirements to teams who used to spend 6 months in a dark room coming back to me later with something that looked marginally close to what I said, that is a gap we need to close. And our goal at Unqork is to have those business teams and those IT teams be able to communicate effectively, be in the same room, share knowledge. And our system really enables this because removing the code allows you to sort of build this with the business people right there with you. I actually did a session with a client this morning quite early where we're just doing exactly that. We created the workflow, all the ideas that we had from the business right there in Unqork, kind of live with them, sort of planning out this application, and they could see it. And this is really where I think the speed of the platform comes into play. And one thing I talked a lot about sort of when I was at BCG was you got 3 categories of a transformation. You got people, process, and technology, right? Before, we would often do people and process because you can do that a little more quickly, and technology would wait a bit. Well, I think now that we can bring the business and IT folks together, technology can keep up, right? So we can make those transformations happen in real time, which is something that a few years back I probably wouldn't have said the same thing. So that's why at Unqork we are focused on really delivering these applications in months, sometimes weeks, and that's our measure, rather than what is normally a year, 2 years, 3 years for a lot of the more traditional large systems.
That's awesome. Jake, thank you so much for your time. This was an amazing conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake Tripp, another innovator here at ITC 2024.
Pleasure.